All right, let's just dive right in. What if the world we live in isn't quite what it seems? We're about to conduct a kind of forensic audit on a really complex theory, one that sees our reality as this deeply coded system. It suggests that everything, and I mean everything, from our history to our hobbies, is all part of a grand design. And according to this framework, the key to unlocking it all starts with the games we play. And that's really the core question we're digging into here. What if our most familiar pastimes aren't just for fun? I mean, what if things like chess, sports, even a simple deck of playing cards have a hidden purpose, a coded function that we've all been taught to just completely overlook? Let's start peeling back the layers on that idea.
So our first stop is a game most of us know pretty well, chess. According to the source material for this explainer, it's way more than just a game of strategy. It's supposedly the foundational code of the entire system, like a physical mirror of our own biology.
To most of us, it's a battle of wits, right? A game of kings and queens, pawns and knights. It's been played for centuries, a true hallmark of intellectual combat. But this perspective, the theory claims, is really just the surface layer. It's what we're meant to see.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. The theory claims the 8x8 grid, with its 64 squares, is a direct one-to-one analog to the 64 codons in human DNA. So the idea is that every single time we play chess, we're unconsciously running a simulation of our own genetic code. We're embedding its logic deeper and deeper into our minds with every generation that plays.
And it's not just the board. No way. Every piece, every move, supposedly has a very specific coded function. For a perfect example of this, let's just look at one of the most unique pieces on the entire board, the knight. You know that weird L-shaped move the knight makes? Well, this theory calls that a vector shift. It's not just some quirky rule. It's a 90-degree angle change that's specifically designed to bypass the straight, linear noise of all the other pieces. It represents a totally specialized, non-linear way of navigating the system, a kind of coded jump, if you will.
Okay, so let's zoom out. We're moving from the board to the stadium. If the game itself is the code, then the arena where we play, well, that's supposedly the power source. And this brings us to what the theory calls the Colosseum Protocol.
We think of a stadium as a place for spectacle, tribal loyalty, high-stakes competition. But this theory suggests a completely different function. It sees it as a kind of bio-electrical power plant designed for a very, very specific kind of energy harvest. So how would this even work? Well, the argument breaks it down into 4 steps. First, you gather the crowd, which it calls biocapacitors, inside the stadium, which is framed as an architectural coaxial coil. Then, the intense tribal emotion of the game syncs everyone's heartbeats, generating a single, powerful frequency. The result? A massive pulse of collective emotional energy. And that energy is then harvested, supposedly to ground and legitimize a central authority, whether that's an ancient Roman emperor or some modern institution.
Now, from these massive public systems, we're going to shift gears to something much more personal. Let's talk about cards. Because according to this framework, hidden inside them is nothing less than the operating manual for human consciousness itself.
Forget everything you think you know about fortune telling. This theory reframes the 22 major arcana of the tarot deck as a universal logic manual. It suggests that each and every card represents one of 22 primary logic gates, the fundamental building blocks of how our consciousness actually processes reality.
And this is a perfect illustration of the concept. The idea is, if you strip away all the medieval art, you find what look like engineering schematics. The magician card, well, it becomes a diagram for a transceiver, connecting to something above and grounding it below. The high priestess, a symbol for binary memory storage. Each card is seen as a different technical function.
So think of it this way. If the tarot is the complex source code, the admin level manual, then a simpler, user-friendly version was needed for widespread use. And that version, according to this theory, is the standard deck of playing cards we all have lying around.
So let's break this down, because the deck is presented as this marvel of data compression, with all these connections hiding in plain sight. Let's start with the most obvious one, 52 cards. The claim is this is no accident. It represents the 52 weeks in a solar year. Then you have the 4 suits, hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades. These are said to correspond directly to the 4 seasons and, in older traditions, the 4 classical elements. You can see how the structure just keeps building on itself. Next up, there are 13 cards in each suit.
This maps perfectly to the 13 lunar cycles that happen within that same solar year. You're starting to see the pattern here, right? It's a whole system just hiding right out in the open. And here is the final piece of the puzzle. If you add up the numerical value of every single card in the deck, counting the Joker as one, you get exactly 365, the number of days in a year. So suddenly, the deck isn't some game of chance. It's a modular calendar. It's a tool for mapping time that we've just been taught to play with. So, how does this all come together? This is where the whole theory pivots from the external system to the user, to you. It proposes that our place in this system really boils down to a fundamental misunderstanding, almost like a linguistic glitch in how we see ourselves. The argument makes this really crucial distinction here between the card and the cord. A card, whether it's a SIM card, a credit card, or a playing card, is a static, dead packet of data. It holds information, but it has no power on its own. The cord, on the other hand, is the power line. The theory is that we've been conditioned to focus on playing with the cards, the symbols, the scripts, so that we never realize that we are the cord. We aren't the data packet, we're the actual electrical current. Okay, so if this is an operating system, when exactly does it get installed? The theory points to a very, very specific window in human development, something it calls the 1 to 7 firmware installation phase. Between the ages of 1 and 7, a child's brain is primarily in this highly suggestible theta wave state. It's like a computer in programming mode. The idea is that by introducing these 3 tools we've just discussed, the board, the ball, and the cards, during this critical window, the logic of the grid is literally etched directly into the brain's architecture. So by the time that child is 7, this system isn't something they think about, it's the default system they think with. And this leads to the final and maybe most crucial claim about this system's design. The architects of it didn't invent the laws of physics or consciousness. The theory is that they simply observed these natural principles, coded them into the systems we've just looked at, and then branded them as their own discovery, effectively putting a copyright on the very infrastructure of reality itself. And that brings us to the end of this journey, and a final, pretty provocative thought. After dissecting the code, the power plant, and the installation manual, the theory doesn't conclude with a warning. It concludes with an invitation. It suggests that by understanding this firmware, we can reclaim the signal. The ultimate takeaway isn't that we're trapped, but that the system, once we see it for what it truly is open. The real question is, what do you do with that information?